Hey guys, Hans Borchard. I want to talk to you about a deficiency that I realized recently in the way I've been training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So, I've been training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu off and on since I was 10 years old, and I've trained all around the world in various academies under various instructors. And I've noticed a lot of differences in the way it's taught. And one thing that I think is a common trend nowadays, especially in the United States, is training jiu-jitsu in a very one-dimensional way. And what I mean by that is that after a certain point, as you train jiu-jitsu with more advanced techniques, you are really training to beat other jiu-jitsu practitioners in a jiu-jitsu rule set. And that's what I mean by one-dimensional. And that's not to say that the skills you develop don't have crossover into other dimensions of martial arts. But if you don't train to cross those skills over, you may find yourself deficient when you're faced with a situation where you need to be able to apply your jiu-jitsu skills under no rule set, um, you know, facing a weapon, facing multiple opponents, in an MMA striking, MMA or fighting situation. Now, I think it's common for a good number of schools these days to mix the martial arts. So they cross train in other, Muay Thai, boxing, other striking arts, other grappling arts, wrestling, judo, sambo, and that's cool. And that definitely makes your jiu-jitsu less one-dimensional, and it prepares you for real fighting situations. But it's also important not just to cross train in those various other arts, but to actually train your jiu-jitsu in a striking situation. So don't just train boxing and Muay Thai. One great way to train your jiu-jitsu with striking is to allow your training partner or opponent to put on boxing gloves. You wear a mouthpiece, and you don't get to hit him, but he gets to hit you. And then you try and apply your wrestling takedowns, judo, whatever, and your jiu-jitsu without striking your opponent. That's another great way to train, so that you're learning in a practical way which techniques, not which sort of sport techniques not to use in a striking situation, and also how to maybe control your opponent's limbs better so that he has less opportunity to strike you. And you can do this safely, by agreeing to start, let's say, at a 10 or 20% striking power, so he's just basically letting you know you could be hit. And then when you're ready for it, you ask your partner, who is the striker, to increase the amount of power he's putting into his punches. And this kind of training, I think, is very valuable, and I think it's a good thing to start doing after you reach like a blue belt level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So once you get above blue belt, it's good to start using your Jiu-Jitsu, at least once or twice a week, in some real or striking situations, not just the sports aspects of Jiu-Jitsu. If you're doing Jiu-Jitsu to have a self-defense skill, you need to be cross-training with this kind of activity. Now, another activity that is I seldom see in a lot of American academies, for example, but I think it was done more in the old school way that Jiu-Jitsu was taught. And I recently had a Brazilian instructor straight from Brazil who's still teaching Jiu-Jitsu as it relates to self-defense using weapons, using rubber guns and practice knives and things like that. And one of the things that I found very interesting that he showed me is that when faced with a knife, for example, an open wielded knife, my and this was against him, who he's an instructor in jiu-jitsu, as am I, but my jiu-jitsu somewhat fell apart because I was so focused on his knife. And that's because my jiu-jitsu has been a little too one-dimensional in the sense that I usually train jiu-jitsu, the sport of jiu-jitsu, but I like to train it for a fight or MMA style, but I haven't done a lot against knives or other weapons. And I think I've seen some cool ways to train, guns and knives. For example, trying grappling to try and prevent somebody from drawing a gun or drawing a knife, or if you conceal carry, using your jiu-jitsu, starting in a grappling situation and still trying to draw your weapon without surrendering it to your opponent. Those are cool ways to train, and there are some effective knife techniques that work better with more percent of chance of success if you actually train them. And so I just want to remind everybody to not just train jiu-jitsu as a sport, bettering your chance and ability to beat other jiu-jitsu practitioners at the sport of jiu-jitsu, but at least occasionally to also train your jiu-jitsu with a broader mind towards real fights, multiple attacker situations, weapons, things like that. So that's my message to you today. I hope that's broadened your mind and let you think about how you're training your jiu-jitsu right now and how you might want to add some elements of those activities into your academy. All right. Have a good one. See you next time.